He was the founder of McDonald's Japan. And before opening the first restaurant in Tokyo, he told the Japanese people that if they ate McDonald's hamburgers and potatoes for 1,000 years, they would become white. But why did he say such a thing? And what was the reaction? Here is the true story of the man behind the golden arches in Japan. Before entering the world of fast food, Den Fujita was already something of a celebrity in Japan. He was a successful importer, had a degree in law from the University of Tokyo, and spoke fluent English. However, the real spotlight came when he got the rights to open McDonald's in Japan. Although he loved the speed and efficiency of the operation, Fujita knew that selling American hamburgers in Japan wouldn't be easy. How do you sell a foreign food product in a country where every meal has been passed down from generations past? And how do you get people to switch their daily diet? Well, as he put it, if you want to succeed in Japan, you must think of a reason why Japanese should give up their traditions and customs and buy your product instead. And that's when the idea hit him. During the post-war era, the Japanese felt inferior to the Americans. So Fujita played into these feelings of inadequacy by promising the Japanese people that if they ate at McDonald's, they would ultimately look more like Westerners. And this led him to make one of the most controversial statements of the century. On April 14, 1971, the very first McDonald's opened its doors in a shopping arcade inside a Mitsukoshi department store in Tokyo. To celebrate the occasion, Den Fujita gave a press conference full of wild hand movements and loud exclamations. The reason Japanese people are so short and have yellow skins is because they have eaten nothing but fish and rice for 2,000 years, he proclaimed. But if we eat McDonald's hamburgers and potatoes for 1,000 years, we will become taller, our skin will become white, and our hair blonde. As if that wasn't crazy enough, he went on to say, I don't care what color the Japanese are now, but we can make them whiter. In fact, Fujita's goal was to make the Japanese population completely white within 5 years. So much for the yellow peril. Japanese journalists were shocked by the audacious comments. However, when a representative from McDonald's U.S. headquarters heard about what Fujita said, they weren't too pleased either. As they saw it, his words made no sense and would only hurt the company. They sent him a telegram telling him to immediately stop making such remarks in public. But he simply replied, "You needn't worry. We know what we're doing." What the heck did he know that those corporate types back in America didn't? Well, Fujita understood something about Japanese culture that nobody else did. The Japanese were desperate to change their appearance. Since the Second World War, the U.S. had occupied Japan and helped rebuild the nation. The occupation lasted until 1952. And during that time, many Japanese men and women developed a fascination with Western culture. And when the war ended, this fascination only intensified. Many Japanese began to admire the perceived superiority of the West and started changing their appearance to look more like their American counterparts. By playing into this cultural obsession, Fujita was able to generate free publicity for McDonald's and establish himself as an icon in the process. It was a bold strategy, but it paid off in a big way. Within a few decades, Fujita's company grew to nearly 3,800 restaurants that earned approximately $4 billion a year. Furthermore, they captured 60% of the Japanese hamburger market. That's right. People were flocking to eat McDonald's every day. And the menu wasn't exactly tailored to the Japanese taste buds. In fact, most Japanese people couldn't even eat spicy food before the introduction of McDonald's. But if you ask any local today, they'll tell you that spicy chicken nuggets are a staple of Japanese cuisine. Clearly, Fujita knew what he was doing. But his secret didn't end there. One of the reasons for McDonald's explosive growth in Japan was that Fujita didn't simply transplant a foreign restaurant into the country. He adapted the menu to local tastes and needs. For example, the teriyaki McBurger was a huge hit because it combined a burger with Japanese flavors. In addition, he also introduced items like chicken tatsuda, a grilled chicken sandwich with tartar sauce. Furthermore, Fujita realized that the Japanese were obsessed with health. So, in order to lure in more customers, he created low-calorie items like apple pie and salads. Of course, the healthy options were secondary to the fact that it was a fast food restaurant. But it helped make his image less tarnished and attracted more customers. By the late 1980s, McDonald's Japan was turning out a profit 3 times greater than McDonald's USA. However, the media still had no idea why Fujita made such a controversial statement at the beginning. And then in 1977, everything changed. Later that year, Fujita published a book called The Jewish Way of Doing Business, which became a bestseller, selling over 1 million copies in Japan. In the book, he argued that Jews had taken over the business world and provided quotes from Bernard Baruch, a prominent Jewish banker who said, "Money is our God. Everything else is secondary." Of course, this statement doesn't reflect the views of most Jews, but that didn't stop Fujita from claiming that Jews were naturally better at business than other races. In the book, he tells a story about a Jewish man named Solomon who wanted to do business in China. According to Fujita, Solomon discovered that the Chinese were stupid and weak. So he decided to take advantage of them. The stupidity of the Chinese is limitless, Solomon says. They can be cheated once, twice, or thrice, but there is no fourth time. Once they find out they are being cheated, they cheat you back. After hearing this, Fujita thought that Solomon was a genius because he figured out how to deal with the Chinese weakness. And who better to teach the Japanese people how to become more like the Jews than Den Fujita himself? But the strange thing is that many of the ideas in the book can be found in classic business books written by non-Jewish authors. For example, Fujita repeats an idea that appears in Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yet, he somehow manages to make it sound Jewish. There's a chapter in Carnegie's book titled Show Respect for Others People, which states, "Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language." Then, in the next chapter, Fujita writes, "The Jews know that a man's name is very important. If you want to impress a Jew, you must use honorific titles when speaking to him." Another example is the idea that you should always appear to be busier than you actually are. In Dale Carnegie's book, the author suggests that you shouldn't let people think you're very busy because it will make you more respected. Then, in the next chapter, Fujita writes, "Jews know the importance of creating the impression of great activity. A Jew always likes to appear busier than he really is." Even Fujita's infamous promise to make the Japanese people white mirrors something Carnegie wrote about flattering people. "People like to be flattered," writes Carnegie. "Give them a good hard look and tell them frankly and sincerely what you think is right about them." Fujita took this advice and applied it to race. Instead of saying that the Japanese would become white, he could have simply said that the Japanese would become healthier. But the provocative statement generated massive amounts of attention, allowing him to convince more people to try his product. Today, Fujita is considered a legend in the business world. Although he retired in 2003, he still owns 25% of McDonald's Japan. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2015, but not before leaving behind a truly bizarre legacy. After reading his book, many Japanese men began to believe that they were inferior because they weren't white. Even though Fujita never intended for the book to be taken literally, he enjoyed watching the media try to make sense of his actions, and deep down, he was proud that he had managed to build a billion-dollar empire on the backs of absurd claims. In fact, he once said, "I'm no one in nonsense."